G'day Bomber fans, we're officially halfway through the year. The boys are having their bye break to regroup and recover, so I figured I would make a video about them while they rest. Today I'm going to grade every single player that is featured in the senior team for us in 2024 high school style, A being a very good grade and D being a grade that I'm probably more likely to receive myself, based on their own expectation as well, where they are as a player, what they give to the team, whether or not they have improved or not from their recent seasons with the club. You know how it works. Let's just get into it pretty quickly because this is going to be a longer video, but also remember that we all view the game very differently, each other. There is no wrong or right, so feel free to leave your opinions down below. I'd love to see them, but be nice to each other when you do it. Starting with Andy McGrath, our vice captain, I think he's had a really good year so far. He's been a bit quiet in the last handful of matches, so recency bias may set in for a few grading him, but I'd say he, outside of this little form slump, has been brilliant. He's had a few best on ground performances or close to it. I think he actually has the third most or fourth most coaches votes for us this year, so it shows how highly rated he is for the club by the coaches. I think he's been great. I wouldn't give him an A based on the last month or so, but a B plus feels right for me. He's been really solid and his rebounding has been top notch as always. His ball use has been quite impressive as well a lot of the time, which is a bit of a criticism we've had for him usually, so it's good to see him playing well for the most part. B plus. It's been a tough year for Sam Draper. He's played 6 games. He's suffered from injury, but even when he was fit or playing, I guess, he wasn't really having that same impact that we saw in a few years ago, and I do get that he's playing sore, but we need to see more from a ruckman. We can't have a dynamic tall averaging 9 touches and 15 hitouts a game. You got to be generous to give him a pass mark. I thought he was good against the Dogs in keeping English quiet, and he was energetic in his first game against Sydney, but he's had some passenger-like matches this year. Most of his games he has been floating through. Draper gets a D. We need more from our big ruck. The best ability is availability, and he is either not playing or playing and not playing too well. Darcy Parish, I think he's shown how important he is to our team in these last few weeks when he has been injured. We are missing his stoppage work in the guts. He is our most pure stoppage midfielder. He's the type of player you appreciate more when they are gone, and he's only played the 7 games. He's averaged a little under 25 touches. Based on his lofty standards, I'd give him a C. It's a pass. He's an All-Australian midfielder who hasn't been able to reach that level this year. His body hasn't helped. He hasn't had many outstanding games like we usually see from him, but I do feel like he just consistently plays his role and makes us a better midfield, even when he is not a standout like he was a few years ago. So I'm going to give Parish a C, but I think he's much more valuable to the team and much more important to the team than his grade suggests. Carl Langford, he's another who's had a little quiet period which could dampen the rest of his season a bit, or his grade. He's been goalless the last couple of weeks, but he's still 6th in the Coleman. He's on track to kick over 50 goals, which is a really good output for any forward. I think he's a bit more inconsistent in games, which is never ideal, but he has shown that he can turn it on to make a difference late in matches when he usually kicks his goals. He's got 28 from 13 games. I reckon he'd get that A if he just made the most out of some moments. He obviously had that Anzac Day miss, those 2 against Gold Coast that could have got us back in the game. He gets a B plus for me. He's had a really strong year, one of our best, All-Australian contender, but just not really vibing giving him an A. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. Elijah Tsatas, it's really tough to judge a guy like this. Most of his time in the senior side has been spent sitting on the bench with the sub vest on, and when he does come on, he is used in roles that don't really suit him as a player. He's played 7 games, and 5 of them were as the sub. He can't really get much form out of that. He's a second year playing, doing well in the reserves. I'm going to give him a C minus. It's the barest of passes. We can't be too harsh on him because he is just a kid, but he does look a level below the rest right now. He definitely needs a spell in the reserves to build some confidence, I reckon. Jye Caldwell, one of the more underrated midfielders in the comp. His defensive work is crucial to our on-field success. He's a tackling machine, top 10 in the comp for tackles. He might not be the flashiest or most exciting player, but he just goes about and gets the job done so consistently for our team. I'm going to give him a B+. I think he's been awesome this year personally. He's he's second in the Everything Essendon Player of the Year count as well, so that says something. I get the feeling you guys are going to agree here. I reckon he is just about our most consistent player. He's low disposal, high impact. The things he does you rarely notice. I love his work though. Zach Merrett, A+. Can't really ask for too much more than what he is currently giving us. There is talk about him being the All-Australian captain. We will see. He's up there in the coaches' votes and Brownlow predictions. He's one of the best players in the comp. No discussions required. Ben Hobbs. Now, he is starting to get to the stage of his career where he should really be cementing his spot in our first team, being a high draft pick and all. And obviously, injury has kept him out of the side recently. He can't do too much about that. But I don't think Hobbs has really managed to make a name for himself in our best 22 this season. He's gone from 19 touches a game last year to 13 this year. Just the 1 goal when he's resting forward. Less tackles, less clearances. And it is hard to break into this midfield, but I do think if he is playing in our team, he needs to have a role somewhere because a few times he's kind of floated through a game, not really doing anything. I'm going to give him a C-. I don't think it's a worry. He's still young. He's still growing and maturing, but he has regressed a bit on last year. Dylan Shiel, it may seem harsh on face value to hit him with a fail mark after just a quarter of footy, but I am looking at his reserves form as well. This is a highly paid former All-Australian midfielder. He's not ancient, he is older, but not at the stage where you would think he should be out of the team. This guy has been fit for months now. He's played 7 or 8 VFL games, but he hasn't really demanded a spot back in the AFL side. This was a marquee signing who we expected to be a huge part of our midfield until his retirement, and right now he's not even our best VFL performer, so it has to be a D for me. He is fit, he is playing regular footy each week, but he just can't get to that AFL team. Jade Gresham, this is a really interesting one. It's hard to know how we judge him. Do we judge him based on his career at St Kilda? Because if so, he is much improved. Or do we judge him based on his price tag? Because he is one of our higher paid players. I think it's also tough to judge Gresham because he isn't your typical small forward. He kind of plays that Will Snelling role. He pushes higher up the field. So his work can't really be measured by goals scored. And I think that showed by his goal assists, 13, 8th most in the comp. He averages just under 6 score involvements a game. He is usually involved in our play going forward. I'm going to give him a B- because of that. I think he is an underrated signing for us. He hasn't set the world alight, but I feel like he's doing more good than bad for this side. B- for Gresham. Will Setterfield, this is really frustrating because he's playing all right footy. He hasn't been bad, and he's just never available though. His body is letting him down all the time. He's been decent when he has played, and he's clearly missed when he doesn't play, but I can't really give him much of a grade because he is always in and out of the side, so he gets a C, I guess. Nik Cox, it's really good that he's getting consistent game time and that his body isn't letting him down. He's just missed the one match this year. He spent a lot of time on the wing, a bit in defence. He's roamed forward of the ball in recent weeks to hit the scoreboard, which is new. I'd like to see more out of Cox though. At the moment, he's playing his role every week and not much more than that. He's yet to have a real breakout game or any game of note. I guess the Gold Coast 3-goal haul was promising, but that's the best of the bunch. He's just a consistent role player. I can't give him a fail because of that, but I'll give him a C- just because he's a 4th-year player, high draft pick. He should really be starting to show more than he currently is. Jordan Ridley, I'm going to give him an A. He's come into the side and showed how important he is. He's already averaging the most intercepts in the comp. With a full year, he would be All-Australian. It's hard to argue that. And it's also hard to judge based off 3 games what grade to give him. But every match he has played, he's been in the top 3 or 4 or 5 best on ground for us, so an A seems fair. Jayden Laverde, he's been really solid. You know what you get from him each week. He isn't a star. He isn't someone you envision playing in a premiership team, but he gives you his all every game. He does make mistakes, but he never lowers his colours and drops his head. He kind of has to get a pass because of that. Coming into a defence without Ridley or Reid and playing his role really well some weeks. C+ for Doss, not giving him much more because he has obviously been soundly beaten by some forwards this year. Archie Perkins is a really tough player to judge. We all felt like he was going to have a breakout year. He had that monster game in round 1, but he hasn't lived up to the hype since then. He's played some really good footy here and there, even with injury interruptions. He is very consistent. He's only dropped below 15 touches once this year. He isn't a high disposal getter, but he makes things happen when he gets the ball. I like his marking too. I like his physicality. He's still very young, playing good footy for us. B-, I reckon. Just a bit more than a pass. Again, like Cox, I'd like to see a little bit more from Perkins. Todd Goldstein, look, I was thinking of giving him a C or a C- because he's been flagging a bit, but realistically, he was expecting to come in and act as a dual ruck with Draper, or at least get help from him, and for most of the season, he has had to do it on his own. He's been beaten a few times, but he saved us from having to play good sides without a force in the ruck. I want to see how he goes with Draper back. I feel like they could get going together, but Goldie on his own is at least trustworthy, so I'll give him a C+. Nick Hind gets a B-. It was probably a lower grade at the start of the year. He was struggling to find his role in the team, but I think that almost gave him the confidence to try everything. He's been a bit of an everywhere man for us. Defense, wing, forward, sub, starter. He's really versatile and energetic. He's genuinely started in some matches as well recently, and this is coming from a guy who many didn't have in the starting team at round 1. I'm going to give Hind a B. Others are having better seasons than Hind, for sure, but he is reinventing himself and providing much needed depth and valuability as a depth player. Peter Wright, I unfortunately have to give him a low grade. I feel like he just isn't giving us enough up forward, and he's leaving too much on Langford and Stringer to do. 13 goals from 9 games is not a good output from a guy who won a best and fairest a couple of years back. Yes, he's having to play ruck a lot and even venture in the back line, which is handy for us. It's why I'm giving him a plus mark. But Wright's impact is measured by goals, and he just isn't getting enough on the scoreboard. 1 goal from his last 3 games. D+. Dyson Heppell, I don't get how he looked so cooked in 2022. We all said retirement was an option, but now he is playing genuinely good footy 2 years later. His distance covered each game is wild. He's up there for the team. He could barely walk a few years back, and now he's one of our fitter players. He's so calm and mature and composed in D50. He's played every game this year. Hasn't looked like needing a rest. Heppell gets a B. Sam Durham, easy A. He's our most improved player. It's wild to think we got this guy in a mid-season draft. He's been awesome this year and is surely up there in our best and fairest count. He doesn't have monster games. He's just so hard at it though, and tough in the contest. Although that match against the Dogs when he shut down Bontempelli comes to mind, he was brilliant to watch then. Durham has evolved from a decent wingman to a really important contested midfielder. His defensive work is great. He gets an A. Harry Jones, a month ago it would have been a B, but he has just lagged a little bit in recent weeks. He's getting his hands on the pill less and less, not having a say in front of goals as much. I'll still give him a pass mark. A C+ feels fair, but he's definitely feeling a bit of pressure from Nate Caddy now. He's set to sign a new contract, which is deserved though. Bryan gets a C, I guess. He's been very good in the reserves. I thought he was a bit off the pace in the AFL match he played. I'd like to see him get another chance, but it's going to take an injury for that to happen. He hasn't really done a lot wrong this year, to be honest, but it would have been good to see him take his opportunity and really demand a spot in the team with it. Jake Stringer, now recency bias tells us he has dropped in form a little bit, but looking at his stats, 24 goals, only 1 goalless game. I feel like Stringer, even on a bad day, can have a huge moment, and that's the great thing about him. The less great thing about Stringer is that he hasn't managed to maintain that early season form that had many saying he was in line for an All-Australian jacket. His grade started at an A in the early rounds, and it slowly decreased to a B-. The expectations for Paco are very high. He's a fantastic player. He can definitely go to higher levels. Mason Redman is another who can go to higher levels. He was an All-Australian squad member last year, and he hasn't really recaptured that form, although I do think he has been very solid for us in defence. He's hardly been a liability. He demands a spot in the best 22 each week. He is in our top 10 or so players in the club, and his form suggests that B- for Red Dog. Xavier Duursma, I really like this guy. I feel like we're missing him so much on that wing now he's injured. He's the type of player you grade lower while they're actually playing, but then realise how bad you missed him in the setup and bump up the grade, if you get me. So his stats aren't that amazing, but his importance to our structure is unmistakable. I feel like he took a bit of time to get going, but that St Kilda game sparked him into life. B for Duursma. Jake Kelly is a really tough player to grade because at his best, he is very important to shutting down team scoring. He's played some roles on really good small forwards and kept them quiet. That's why he was brought into the team. That middle part of the season so far, I think we all fell in love with Kelly again, but he's since moved back higher up the field, playing on a wing, even forward up times, and he just doesn't have the same impact. It's not his fault, really. It's coaching. It's how you fit him in the team when he isn't playing a negating role. I'm going to give Kelly a C-, but I do think at his best, he's been great. Nate Caddy gets a C. I mean, even the fact he made his debut is enough for a pass for me. Key position player getting a game at a club that was second at the time. That is impressive. His debut was alright. He didn't set the world alight, but he didn't look out of place, so a C by default. Zach Reid, I have to include him in the video, but I can't really give him a grade. It might seem a bit unfair after I was pretty harsh on Shiel, but Reid hasn't put a foot wrong all year, and he's been really unlucky with injuries. He was tearing up in the VFL when he returned, unlike Shiel. He was ready to play AFL, but he just got a freak pectoral tear. Shiel has been fit and healthy for a few months now and can't get back into the team through form. Reid can't get back into the team through luck, so I can't really give him a grade when he's only played a quarter or two in the AFL. Ben McKay, he's another tough one to judge. He's eating up a lot of our salary. Defenders are always hard to get a gauge on for the public as well. I see a North fan on Twitter roast McKay for his low disposal counts, which is hilarious, but I think McKay's been really good, and he's had one down game this year, and that was when King kicked 3 or 4 on him. Even against Carlton, he kept his twin quiet for 95% of the game. He's up there in the league for intercepts and intercept marks, as we've come to expect over the years. So McKay gets a B. He's proving a very valuable pickup. We no longer have to really worry about opposition key forwards every week. Davey Jnr, hard one to judge because a lot of the time his best work is hard to measure because it's based around pressure, like that Adelaide game when he led the ground for pressure acts, I believe. Didn't do too much else, but made it hard for them to rebound and transition, which we've struggled with in the past. So he's been a bit of a placeholder for Guelfi and Menzie, playing his role until they return. So Davey gets a C. He's played a lot more than I expected, 8 games, and he's rarely been horrible. Matt Guelfi, similar role to Davey, but much more effective. Guelfi has had some tremendous shutdown games on opposition rebound defenders. He is living in Sicily's head rent-free after round 1. He shut out Lachie Whitfield from a game as well. 7 games, 11 goals. Doesn't sound remarkable, but the fact he is providing defensive work that cannot be measured, but also hitting the scoreboard as well, I think that's fantastic. He's been really good this year, Guelfi. I'm giving him a B. He can't go higher because he's had a couple of quieter games. Nic Martin, I don't know how we got this guy for free like we did. He is incredible. He has been really good in his defensive role, supplying heaps of drive and creativity through his kicking down back, but lately he's also become a bit of a break glass in case of emergency player, being thrown forward to spark up the attackers. Some say he is more suited to a wing. I tend to agree, but wherever he plays, he's great, so he gets an A-. And finally, Jye Menzie, he got off to a slow start before his early season injury. It caused many to question whether he was a best 22 player or not, but his last few weeks have been a lot better in his new wing role. He's even been in defense a little bit, which is interesting. He was one of our better players against Carlton. He was energetic against the Suns. I'm giving him a C+, I reckon. His last few weeks have been good, but it's tough to know where he fits in when players return from injury. And that is that. Longer video today. Hopefully you stuck around till the end. Let me know what you think I got wrong. wrong. We all see the game very differently, so no wrong or right. Cheers for watching though. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.